The Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman. Picture this. You stride confidently toward a sleek glass door and give it a good push. Nothing happens. Awkwardly, you pull instead. Still locked in place. You try the other side, pulling harder now, cheeks getting warmer. Just when you're ready to admit defeat and slink away in shame, someone glides up from the opposite side and whoosh! The door slides open like magic. Sound familiar? We've all lived through these humbling little defeats. That bewildering moment with a hotel shower that either scalds or freezes you. The remote control that seems to require a PhD to operate. The time you nuked an important document instead of saving it. And here's what we almost always do in these moments. We beat ourselves up. God, I'm such a dinosaur with technology, we mutter. How am I this clumsy? But here's a plot twist for you. What if none of this is your fault? What if that surge of frustration isn't revealing your inadequacy, but screaming about the object's failure? That's the mind-bending premise of one of the most influential books ever written about how we interact with stuff. The Design of Everyday Things. Its author, Don Norman, is a cognitive scientist who became a legend not by dissecting brains in sterile labs, but by obsessing over the mundane objects that drive us quietly insane every single day. He studied those maddening doors, those cryptic faucets, and those rage-inducing gadgets, and posed one beautifully simple question. Why the heck are they so hard to use? This book became an instant sensation, practically scripture for designers, engineers, and creators at places like Apple, Google, and Pixar. It sold millions of copies and fundamentally rewired how we build and think about our world. And right now, I'm going to unpack its most powerful insights for you. Here's my promise. By the time we're done, you'll never glance at a door, a stove, or your own phone quite the same way again. You'll start detecting a hidden language, woven into every object around you. You'll grasp why some things feel like natural extensions of your thoughts, while others make you fantasize about hurling them out a window. Even better, you'll stop the self-blame and start seeing the world through a designer's eyes. You'll develop a kind of superpower, the ability to spot the invisible forces shaping every moment of your day. So let's dive into the mind of a master observer and decode the secrets hiding in plain sight all around us. Everything kicks off with a simple observation that became so legendary they named the problem after Don Norman himself. We call them Norman doors. A Norman door is any door that lies to you about how to use it. It's a door whose design screams one instruction when you should actually do the opposite. Picture a heavy glass door with a big, chunky horizontal bar across it. That bar is practically begging you to grab it and pull, right? It fits your hand perfectly. So you grip it and yank. Nothing. You pull harder. Muscles tensing. Still nothing. Then someone on the other side gives it the gentlest nudge and breezes right through. The handle shouted, "Pull me!" But the door needed pushing. That right there? That's bad design distilled to its essence. It's a door making you feel like an idiot, when the real failure belongs entirely to whoever created it. Norman discovered that our entire world is littered with these friction points, these Norman doors and countless disguises. And he noticed something fascinating. When we hit these snags, our knee-jerk reaction is self-blame. We assume we're the problem. But Norman's revolutionary insight was flipping that assumption completely upside down. He declared, machines, objects, and systems have a duty to understand people. We don't have a duty to decode their arbitrary, nonsensical logic. This perspective shift is the bedrock of everything that follows. It's an act of radical empathy. Good design isn't fundamentally about making things pretty, though aesthetics can play a role. At its heart, good design is a conversation between designer and user, a wordless dialogue conducted entirely through the object itself. And for that conversation to succeed, the designer must understand how our minds actually work. Two qualities absolutely define good design, Norman argues: discoverability and understanding. Discoverability asks, can I figure out what this thing even does? When you spot a button, you instinctively know you can press it. When you see a handle, you know you can grip it. You've discovered the possible actions. Understanding is the follow-up. Okay, I know I can push this button, but what happens when I do? What's the outcome? When both are crystal clear, the object feels intuitive. When either is muddy, we get lost and frustrated. To achieve that clarity, Norman hands us a toolkit of 5 fundamental concepts, 5 secret signals that skillful designers use to guide us. Once you learn to recognize them, you'll spot them absolutely everywhere. The first, and probably most famous, is affordances. An affordance is the relationship between an object and a person that determines what's physically possible. It's not just a feature of the object, it's a relationship. A chair, for instance, affords sitting, but only for someone roughly the right size. That tiny dollhouse chair doesn't afford sitting for you, even though it's technically still a chair. A flat, sturdy boulder might afford sitting, despite never being designed for it. Affordances are all the possibilities an object opens up for you. A knob affords twisting. A slot affords inserting something. Glass affords seeing through, but it also creates an anti-affordance. It blocks you from walking through. Here's where it gets intriguing. An affordance exists whether you notice it or not. That spotless glass door still blocks you even if it's invisible. That's why birds slam into windows. The anti-affordance of blocking them is absolutely real, but it's completely imperceptible. Which brings us to concept number 2, the even more crucial one: signifiers. If an affordance is what you can do, a signifier is the clue revealing how to do it. Norman insists signifiers are actually far more valuable to designers than affordances. That big, grippy handle on the push door? That was a signifier, and a deceitful one. The simple word push taped to the door is also a signifier. It's a hint communicating the correct action. Smart design weaves in signifiers naturally. A flat metal plate on a door signals pushing. A small, slim handle signals pulling with just fingertips. A big, round doorknob signals grasping and rotating. Bad design either lacks signifiers completely, or worse, deploys misleading ones. Norman shares this great story about a sink in a London hotel. He washed his hands and then stood there completely stumped about how to drain the water. No lever, no knob, no button anywhere. He searched frantically. He even attempted prying the stopper open with a spoon. Finally, defeated and embarrassed, he trudged down to the front desk to ask. The answer? Push down on the stopper. The sink stopper itself was the control, but there was absolutely zero signifier communicating this. Even worse, it forced him to plunge his clean hands back into dirty water. A failure on multiple levels. The third tool in our designer's kit is mapping. Mapping describes the relationship between a control and its effect. The strongest mappings are what Norman calls natural mappings, where the connection feels obvious and immediate. Think about driving. To turn right, you rotate the steering wheel right. The top of the wheel moves in the exact same direction as your car. That's beautiful, natural mapping. But what about your stove? Most stoves arrange 4 burners in a square, but line up the controls in a single row. So which knob fires up the front right burner? Is it the first knob, the second, the far right one? There's no intuitive relationship. The control layout bears no resemblance to the burner layout. The result? Even after using the identical stove for years, we still mess up. We ignite the wrong burner, or we crouch down squinting at the tiny faded diagrams beside the knobs. That's a mapping failure. What would brilliant mapping look like? Imagine if those 4 knobs were positioned in the same square pattern as the burners themselves. You'd never make another mistake. The relationship would be instantly, obviously clear. No instructions, no diagrams, no memorization needed. The knowledge would exist in the world, not trapped inside your head. A fantastic mapping example is the seat adjustment control in certain cars. The control is literally a miniature version of the seat. Want to tilt the seat back forward? Push the back of the mini seat forward. Want to raise the front cushion? Lift the front of the little model. It's brilliant because it's perfectly transparently intuitive. The 4th concept is feedback. Feedback communicates the result of your action. It's that satisfying click when you plug in a cable, the light glowing to life when you press a power button, or the gentle whir your computer makes telling you it's thinking. Feedback answers the crucial question, did it work? And timing matters enormously. Ever jabbed an elevator button repeatedly because nothing seemed to happen? That's lack of immediate feedback. You're unsure if the system even registered your request. A well-designed elevator button illuminates instantly when pressed, silently reassuring you. Message received. Help's coming. But feedback can also overwhelm or underwhelm. A single cryptic beep from an appliance that doesn't explain what happened is useless feedback. A device that beeps relentlessly can become so irritating we learn to ignore it or disable it entirely, which might actually be dangerous. Great feedback is immediate, informative, and proportionate. It tells you what happened in a calm, respectful way. Finally, the 5th and perhaps most powerful tool, the conceptual model. A conceptual model is the simplified explanation living in your head about how something operates. It doesn't need to be technically perfect, but it absolutely needs to be useful. On your computer, you've got files and folders. You can drag a file and drop it into a folder. Your conceptual model mimics a physical office with paper documents and manila folders. In reality, no actual folders exist inside your computer. Data gets stored in wildly complex ways across hard drives. But the folder metaphor is a stroke of genius because it helps you understand how to navigate the system. When a design provides you a solid conceptual model, you feel empowered and in control. You can predict outcomes. When it gives you a terrible one, you're completely lost. Norman tells this fantastic story about his old refrigerator. It had 2 compartments, freezer and fresh food, and 2 controls labeled freezer and refrigerator. Simple enough, right? The conceptual model seems obvious. One knob controls freezer temperature, the other controls fridge temperature. But no matter what he tried, he could never get the temperatures right. If the fridge ran too warm and he turned its dial colder, suddenly the freezer would become Arctic and his lettuce would freeze solid. The problem? The conceptual model implied by those controls was completely, utterly false. In reality, the refrigerator only had one cooling mechanism. One knob controlled how cold the entire system ran, and the other controlled what percentage of that cold air got diverted to the freezer versus the fresh foods section. The 2 controls were completely interdependent. Without understanding the real conceptual model, trying to adjust temperatures became an exercise in maddening trial and error. The design fundamentally lied to him. So we've got these 5 powerful tools: affordances, signifiers, mapping, feedback, and conceptual models. Together, they form the foundation of understandable, usable design. But to truly grasp why things go sideways, we need to dig deeper into the psychology of how we humans actually perform actions. Norman introduces two powerful concepts here: the gulfs of execution and evaluation, plus the 7 stages of action. Imagine facing a brand new device. You need to cross 2 gulfs. The first is the gulf of execution. This is the chasm between what you want to accomplish, your goal, and what the system actually lets you do. It's that moment when you wonder, how the heck do I work this thing? What are my options? A well-designed product builds a sturdy bridge across this gulf using clear signifiers, smart mapping, and constraints that shepherd you toward correct actions. The second is the gulf of evaluation. This is the gap between the system's current state and your ability to understand that state. It's where you ask, what just happened? Is this what I wanted? This gulf gets bridged by clear feedback and a solid conceptual model helping you interpret what you're experiencing. When both gulfs are wide and treacherous, you feel helpless and confused. When they're narrow and easy to cross, you feel competent and in command. The designer's job is essentially being a bridge architect. To understand bridge building, Norman breaks down any action into 7 stages. This might sound a bit academic initially, but it's actually an elegant way to understand the journey from thought to reality. Most of this happens subconsciously, but when we get stuck, it's because one of these stages broke down. Let's walk through it with a simple scenario. I want to read my book, but it's getting dark. 1. The goal. First, you form a goal, get more light. 2. Plan. Next, you plan. You could open curtains, relocate to a different chair, or switch on a lamp. You decide, turn on the lamp. 3. Specify. Now you specify the action sequence. Reach for the switch on the lamp. 4. Perform. Finally, you execute the action. You physically extend your hand and flip the switch. That's the execution side. Now comes evaluation. 5. Perceive. You perceive the world's new state. You see light flooding the room. 6. Interpret. You interpret that perception. The lamp is now on. 7. Compare. And you compare the outcome with your original goal. Yes, I've got light now. I can read my book. Every single action we take, monumental or trivial, follows this cycle. When design fails, it's because it sabotaged us at one of these stages. A light switch with unclear mapping fails at the specify stage. A button giving no feedback fails at the perceive stage. A refrigerator with a bogus conceptual model fails at the interpret stage. By asking targeted questions at each of the 7 stages, a designer can pinpoint precisely where a product betrays its user. This leads us to one of the book's most compassionate and vital ideas, the nature of human error. We've established that bad design causes most frustrations, but we still make mistakes. Why? Norman draws a crucial distinction between 2 error types, slips and mistakes. A slip happens when you intend to do the right thing, but botch the execution. It's an action error, usually occurring subconsciously, especially when we're skilled at something and running on autopilot. For example, you mean to return the milk to the fridge, but you're distracted and accidentally stash it in the cupboard. Your goal was correct. Your action went astray. That's a slip. A mistake, conversely, is an intention error. It's when you form the wrong goal or wrong plan from the start. Even if you execute flawlessly, you're still doing the wrong thing. Back to the refrigerator example. If you believe the refrigerator knob directly controls its temperature, and you keep cranking it up expecting it to get colder, you're making a mistake. You're perfectly executing a fundamentally flawed plan. Mistakes spring from bad conceptual models or misreading the situation. Why does this distinction matter? Because the solutions are completely different. To prevent slips, You need better design providing strong feedback, clear constraints, and reducing wrong action opportunities. That ATM forcing you to retrieve your card before dispensing cash? That's anti-slip design preventing a common memory lapse error. To prevent mistakes, you need better conceptual models. You need the system helping you understand the situation correctly so you form the right goal initially. You need better guidance, better support, not just better buttons. And even then, Norman argues, we should reframe the entire concept of error. In conversation between two people, if someone says something confusing, the other person doesn't display an error 404 inches message. They ask for clarification. They collaborate toward understanding. Why can't our relationship with machines feel more like collaboration? Instead of punishing us for errors, our devices should guide us toward correct actions. An error isn't a failure. It's an opportunity for design to be more helpful. This is why the legendary undo command ranks among the most powerful and humane inventions in modern computing. It acknowledges that slips will happen and provides a safety net. It forgives us. It treats us like humans, not machines. But what happens when design principles crash into the messy reality of business? This is where things get genuinely challenging. In the real world, design isn't purely about the user. It's tangled up with competition, costs, and deadlines. Norman identifies a disease infecting almost every successful product. He calls it featureitis, and its primary symptom is, quote, creeping featureism. It works like this. A company launches a simple, elegant product, doing one thing brilliantly. People love it. It's a hit. But then pressure builds. Competitors add a new feature, so you must match it, plus add one more to stay ahead. Existing customers start demanding more options. Marketing wants shiny new features to promote for the next launch. And gradually, year after year, that simple, elegant product morphs into a bloated, complicated nightmare. More buttons, more menus, more modes, more confusion. Norman uses a wonderful example, the simple Lego motorcycle from his book's first edition. Originally, it had just 15 pieces. It was so cleverly designed you could assemble it without instructions. The physical, cultural, and logical constraints of the pieces guided you to one single correct assembly. But when writing the revised edition, he found the new version of that same Lego motorcycle. It now had 29 pieces. He, Don Norman himself, needed the instruction manual to build it. Featureitis had struck. The cure for featureitis, he suggests, is courage. It's courage to resist pressure to match competitors feature for feature. It's courage to focus on what makes your product genuinely great, and accept being good enough elsewhere. It's courage to say no to more, favoring better instead. This requires deep, customer-obsessed philosophy, one ignoring market noise, and focusing relentlessly on solving real human needs. Ultimately, this is what design thinking truly means. It's not a rigid process, but a mindset. It starts by refusing to solve the problem you're handed. Instead, you diverge, exploring, questioning, observing, to discover the real problem. This is the first diamond of his famous double diamond model. Diverge to find the right problem, then converge on a clear problem statement. Only then do you tackle the second diamond, solving the problem, and again you diverge. You brainstorm, generate countless ideas, build rough prototypes, test them, and embrace failure. You fail often and fast, because every failure teaches something valuable. Finally, after all that exploration, you converge on a solution that's not just elegant, but genuinely serves human needs. It's an iterative, sometimes chaotic process, but it's rooted in profound respect for the person who will ultimately use the product. It's a process balancing business constraints with human needs, and it reminds us that the most successful, beloved products aren't merely tools. They're companions in our daily lives. They respect our intelligence, forgive our slips, and quietly, elegantly help us achieve our goals. They make our lives a little bit better, a little easier, and a little more joyful. And that, Don Norman shows us, is design's true purpose. When you finish a book like The Design of Everyday Things, the world transforms. It's like someone handed you a new pair of glasses, and suddenly you can decode the hidden language running everything around you. That frustration you used to feel at confusing doors gets replaced by curiosity. You don't rage at the stove anymore. You examine its knob layout and think, classic mapping problem. The most powerful lesson, for me, transcends design itself. It's about empathy. The book's core message is a profound act of forgiveness. It tells us when we struggle with our world's tools, the problem isn't us, it's the tools. This simple realization lifts an enormous psychological burden. It liberates us from self-blame and empowers us to become curious observers and critics of our surroundings, rather than passive victims. In today's world, this message resonates more urgently than ever. We're surrounded by incredibly powerful technology that's often deeply bewildering. We carry supercomputers in our pockets, yet sometimes can't figure out how to silence a notification. We're told technology makes us smarter, but so often it just makes us feel incompetent. Don Norman's work reminds us it doesn't have to be this way. Technology should serve us, not vice versa. It should be designed with deep understanding and respect for our human nature, our creativity, our adaptability, and yes, even our tendency towards slips. So how can you start applying these insights in your own life right now? Here are 3 simple actions you can take. First, for the next week, hunt for one Norman door. It could be an actual door, a confusing website button, or a poorly designed kitchen gadget. When you find it, don't just get frustrated. Pause and analyze it. Why is it confusing? Missing signifiers, unnatural mapping, poor feedback? Simply naming the problem transforms your frustration into intelligent observation. Second, redesign something small. Grab the most annoying remote control in your house. Get paper and sketch a better version. What would you eliminate? How would you group buttons for natural mapping? You don't need to build it. Just thinking through a better solution sharpens your design eye and makes you aware of the choices, good and bad, designers constantly make. And third, explain a conceptual model. Next time you use a familiar device, try explaining to a friend how you think it works. What's your mental story for how the microwave heats food, or how your playlist shuffles songs? Articulating your conceptual model helps you realize how much we depend on these mental stories, and highlights how critical it is for designers to provide good ones. That was a summary of The Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman. We've explored the key ideas today, but I'll be honest, a summary is like browsing travel photos. It can show you beautiful sights, but never replaces actually taking the journey yourself. The real magic of this book happens in quiet reading moments, when a particular story or simple phrase connects with your own experiences and a light bulb ignites in your mind. This summary helps you decide if this book deserves your time. If anything we've discussed today resonated with you, I genuinely encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning principles. It's an experience that can authentically change how you see the world and your place within it. You can find a link to the book in the description below. Also, if you found this journey valuable, please take a moment to like this summary and subscribe to the channel. It's a small click for you, but makes a huge difference, ensuring you won't miss our next exploration into another transformative book from the Billionaire's Bookshelf. Let's keep learning and growing together.